or subtopics. Each body paragraph consists of a topic sentence and several supporting sentences. A conclusion sentence draws the paragraph together. Right. Here is again the body paragraph. It's just an example where the topic, as we have already read, the first sentence which talks, which states or gives a gist of the entire thing is called the topic sentence. So if you look at it, the first and most important problem is metropolitan cities' inadequate public transportation system. So this stands as a topic sentence. Now the whole explanation, which usually revolves around the topic sentence, and they are also called as the supporting sentences, which adds to the topic sentence. Then we have the concluding sentence. So in order for people to get to their destinations on time, people must allow for waiting time at the bus and streetcar stops. So this is a concluding sentence, which will kind of round it up, which will kind of concludes the whole thing, like as the topic sentence. Then there are the sentences following the topic sentence, which are additional sentences which supports the topic sentence. Then we have the concluding sentence. Then moving on to the parts of an essay. So the conclusion paragraph is the last paragraph in the essay. It completes the essay by summarizing or repeating the most important ideas. So the conclusion can also include an opinion, a prediction, or a solution to a problem. Now, this is how it goes. Introduction, body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, body paragraph 3, and then conclusion. And one more thing, please bear in your mind that, see, the body of an essay need not be just 2 or 3. It can run into 4 and 5 too. But make sure the body paragraph is nothing but which talks about the introduction. What we have mentioned in the introduction as a topic statement, the remaining paragraphs talks about it. It's like addition to it, support statements for the introduction. So it can be 1, it can be 2, or it can even be 3 or more than that. Now coming to the conclusion is the last one. Right. So now, in conclusion, please remember, you kind of summarize it. You summarize whatever has been discussed in the earlier passage, okay, in the earlier paragraph. So in conclusion, metropolitan city must improve. It's like giving the summary of the main ideas into this conclusion. Then, so now again, the last few lines, you can even give a kind of a prediction. Like, in other words, metropolitan city must improve its image, or it will soon become just another mediocre city due to the lack of administrative responsibilities to solve these unfortunate problems. You are predicting what it is going to be, what the future consequences would be if this is going to run, in this manner. So you are concluding by predicting what is, and sometimes you might also kind of suggest an alternative for that. Next. So basically, this is all about the essay part of it. And another important aspect we all have to remember is, when we write an essay, cohesiveness, it should be connected. The sentences should be connected, and they have to run in a meaningful pattern. That is intro, body, and conclusion. Body can be in any number of paragraphs, and it should be like, in sync, in synchronization. They have to be cohesive. They have to be coordinating with each other. You can't jump from intro to conclusion and then back to the paragraph. There should be a proper alignment of the paragraph that has to be maintained. Okay, so this is what is all about the essay writing. And then Right. Let me just share another screen, another PPT. One second. So now we're going to talk about a bit about the descriptive essay. So when I say something about the descriptive essay, what does it actually mean? Like, it stands for something like description. Okay. So say, for example, I think you are quite familiar with this kind of a descriptive essay, where sometimes you were given a picture where you have to describe about it and write it in a form of an essay. I mean, you are actually putting across your opinion to it. Okay. And then uh, first and foremost, you have to, understand what exactly interpretation should be done in a proper manner before you start writing a descriptive essay. And then uh, if you happen to write a description about something, it can be about incidents, it can be about events, it can be about people or places. So, but basically, more than visual is more appealing than a mere speech. So that is the reason why, um, where visuals talk a lot more than what you describe. So that is better than your speech. And then they don't carry any sort of argument, but they just present a description of the subject matter as it suggests. Description, it says so. And then let me just see if I have a PPT about it. Here it goes. So a description um, is a picture in words that helps the reader see, hear, taste, smell, or feel something that the writer has experienced. Now, that is why when you happen to read certain times, when you happen to read some horror, flicks or novels, the description is so vivid there. As you read, you get into you start identifying yourself with one of the character. And when you think, when there is a kind of a scene which describes about a monster, and suddenly you start you feel that there is somebody around you. You get into that scenario there in such a way that the description is so clearly given that you start living in it, and you start to feel that there is really some kind of an anonymous or some kind of unknown object around you. That is how the effectiveness of a word it describes. The descriptive essay, it's a kind of a picture in words that helps the reader see, hear, taste, smell, or feel something that the writer has experienced. Right. Moving on to the next slide, we what sense is being used in the following sentences. Now look at this. There's an example. The door to her house was battered. There were dents and dings, and red paint was peeling to reveal the blackness underneath. So, it's kind of visual. You get to see there is a sort of description about the visual thing. And in the following sentences, I jumped and bit my lip. The taste of rusty, uh, it's again about the taste. This is the sensory thing which has been evoked when you describe something. And then as we pulled into the driveway, I could tell the hamburgers and hot dogs were in the grill. Now this talks about the smell. Okay. So you smell something. see, actually speaking, it's only the words which are doing that. So they are, there's nothing like there's a picture or something, but the words which are described in such a way that you get to feel all the senses. And then now here the room was like a furnace, causing beads of sweat to trickle down my back. Now you feel that, it's kind of your sense, touch. Okay. You can feel the heat of it. Then when we write a description, we must remember to begin with a hook that tells what the description is about, then use exact, vivid words to create a picture in the reader's mind, and include important details about what you are describing. Put details in the time order, spatial order, or in order of importance. Use sensory words that help your reader picture what you are describing, and in a way that wraps up the description. The best possible vacation. Now, the first time I went to okay, this is another example which talks about see, as I sat on the beach, I felt the gentle breeze coming from the water. The warm sun was illuminating the water, making it sparkle. I mean, you can see the visual, you can see the sensory, you can see the music. I mean, the audible, the ears, the auditory thing also is visible here. Music radiated from car stereos, while the smells of grilling and the suntan lotion filled with me with joy, something like that, right? So this is all about the descriptive essay. Right, let me just share another video where it talks about the argumentative essay. Here we go with the argumentative essay. What exactly is an argument? Now, as the name suggests, it talks about right. So here the argumentative essay, which talks about an argument, and it involves the process of establishing a claim and then proving it with the use of logical reasoning, examples, and research. See, this is a basic difference between a descriptive and an argumentative essay. Now, in an argumentative essay, you are supposed to put forth your, on what exactly you are trying to say. Okay, but with suitable evidence again. And then, you try to prove it with the use of logical reasoning, examples, and research. Right. Now, moving on to the next. Okay, here we go. So the purpose of an argumentative essay is to present well-reasoned conclusions in order to persuade the audience to accept or at least seriously consider a point of view. Now, when you are trying to argue about a certain point, it's not like, kind of a stern kind of a statement. I mean, you have to ensure that you support your statement or the writing with a suitable evidence. Unless and until then, you just can't try to put it across or convey what you feel, strongly about a particular opinion. Okay, unless and until you support with an evidence, you cannot do it. And the aim of writing argumentative essays is to convince or persuade the reader. One attempts to change the reader's mind and convince the reader to agree with the point of view or claim of the writer. So here the key terms to learn before writing an argumentative essay is the argumentation. That is the active process of forming reasons, drawing conclusions, and applying them to a case in discussion. Pro-argument, point or statement that supports one's ideas. Then counter-argument, point or statement in opposition to the argument being made in a writer, written document or speech. Then you have refutation, the process of disapproving an opposing argument. Opponent, a person who disagrees with something and speaks against it. Proponent, someone who argues in favor of something or advocates it. Right. Elements of argumentation is the argument states a claim and supports it with reasons and evidence from sources. Without an actual authentic information, you cannot jump into an argumentative essay. That is very, very important. So arguing your side makes you the proponent, right? Then again, the counter argument is an argument that stands in opposition to your argument. And the counter argument is your opponent's argument that tries to explain why you are wrong. Then when you are here to write then again, choosing a topic and writing the thesis statement. Decide on a controversial topic, debatable and interesting. Write an argumentative thesis about a statement. Generate ideas, free writing or brainstorming. When supporting your argument, one important concern in writing an argumentative essay is to strengthen your argument. To do this, you need to base your argument on sound evidence. In supporting your argument, the evidence that you include can be facts and data that have been objectively proven or generally accepted. And or examples should be sufficient number of examples to prove the case. Support from authority, opinions or of experts. Then the role of your audience, understanding your audience is also very, very important. It's a key to effective writing of all kinds, especially argumentative writing. Next, then an argument is an implicit dialogue or an exchange with your audience. So in writing arguments, assume there is a reader that will not agree with you. So you always have to make such assumptions. So when you are writing, you also have to imagine that the opponent will not agree to it. So to convince the opponent, what is that you're going to write? I mean, how are you going to convince the opponent? That is very important. Then audience awareness is absolutely essential to successful argument. Therefore, you know your audience, what is their position on the issue? How strongly do they feel about it? Are they open-minded enough to consider other views? What will their objections to be your argument? And another aspect is do not be rude, right? You have to use tactful and courteous language. Avoid sweeping statements like everybody knows or people with any intelligence agree that. So you have to, you make sure that you should not be rude and do not be using certain statements which sound like, a generalized statement. It's not like that. And make sure you use courteous language. So in conclusion, please remember, have a point to your argument, make your own decisions about your topic, identify your audience, explain what they say about your topic, respond to what they say with your argument, address potential objections with respect, show why your audience should care. So with this, we conclude what the argumentative essay. Next, we move on to, then again, there are, the ways of writing an essays. So please remember, there's always something called as a rough draft or pre-writing stage. Then you have to understand the topic first and foremost. Then we have planning as to how you need to write it. Then we have something called drawing an outline, and then it goes on to the conclusion part of it. So then moving on to the next, we come across the analytical essay. So analytical essay is, and again, something where you analyze about a situation. So basically, what is the difference between an argumentative and an analytical essay? Analytical essays, they all present the argument or a major thesis of the writer on a specific issue, but it is different from argumentative essay. Like unlike argumentative essays, analytical essays do not intend to influence the reader opinion on the discussed subject matter. Therefore, there is no element of persuasion. So this is the major difference between an argumentative and an analytical. In argumentative, you are trying to convince the reader. You are putting across your statement with the proper evidence. Whereas in an analytical essay, you are simply analyzing it. Simple analyzing. So analytical essays attempt to present a point of view with objectivity to the readers and do not persuade the learner to be convinced to accept the perspective of the writer. So in an analytical essay, the writer provides many examples or evidences possible to justify the viewpoint that is being discussed or examined. Now, when you talk about the stages of writing analytical essay, it is pre-writing stages. That is where you have to understand the topic and you have to plan about it, then drawing an outline. That is the pre-writing stage. Then when there is again another step, which is drafting an analytical essay, where you will again write a paragraph about it, paragraphing, the art of analyzing, choosing apt language. Okay, these are. Then we have the next stage, which is post-writing stage. That is, once we are done with the pre-writing, then the writing, then we have the post-writing stage where we, checking again, checking the coherence and cohesion, then proofreading, then editing. All these are very, very important. And, the kind of style guide, that is, what is it, like the MLA style or whatever it is, and then, or the APA style. There are several these things. So accordingly, the editing has to done, proofreading, and so these are the key steps taken up in this essay writing called the analytical essay. Right. Then moving on to the next block, that is shortening text for future use. That is note making, note taking, and summarizing. So basically, what is note making? I think we are all accustomed to this kind of note making, it's a kind of a form of shortening or condensing text for future use. So it's not just writing anything one reads or hears. It's a process of reviewing, connecting, synthesizing ideas from reading. So it may be noted here that we make notes from a book. Like as this usually we come across in the library. So when we sit in a library, we kind of refer to so many books. But then as we refer, we jot down certain points from the books. And that is called note making. It's done to store information and use it in future. So it's different from note taking. So we make notes from books, whereas we take notes from lectures and speeches. So note taking is, as we listen to a lecture, we jot down points. That is note taking. Note making is when we read the books and jot down the points as we come across and we find there are keywords which might be helpful in improving the text. We take it down, and that is called note making. So we make notes as preparation for an essay or presentation or exam. I'm sure when you take up your exams, you would also remember of making notes. Yeah, as we sit down to learn an answer, and the answer, if it is pretty too long, We jot down the points. And then what we do, we try to understand the points. Then we develop our own answer, taking those key points. Now, in note making, we come across different types of note making, that is linear notes and pattern notes, right? So, but let me just tell you something about the stages of note making. One, before reading, write the details of the text you are reading and the date. Now, during and after, that is before, during, and after, these are the stages. So when during the note making, you write down the main points, and after that you reflect and review, then organize the notes. Now, types of note making, when we talk about linear notes, these are the notes that are the simplest and therefore considered to be the most common style of notes, both for reading and writing. By linear, we mean a line which indicates the notes are written down in a page, one line after another. So this is another pattern of writing note making. Then there is again another one where sometimes we even number them. I mean, it's kind of in a serial or in a kind of a numbered fashion. It comes down when you start making notes in this manner. But there's again another method which is called as pattern notes. Patterns make the notes more interesting and provides more scope to memorize. So they are not linear and therefore have some distinctive patterns. And they are mostly represented using sketches through illustrations, symbols, and structures. So here are a few examples of pattern notes. I'm sure we all are familiar with mind mapping. So this is again one type of note making, mind maps, tree diagrams, spidergram, and then we have the matrix, then flow chart. Right here, these all fall into the category of pattern note making. So pattern notes. So I mean, we use a kind of different patterns like the mind map, which where we have branches and tertiary, main branches, and so on. Then we have the tree diagram in a similar, where you have one trunk leading on to branches and sub branches and so on. And then we have then the spidergram, where each block of written material leading to another with the help of an arrow which points out to that in the form of a spider web. It appears like a web. Then we have the matrix. Then the flow chart, which we all familiar. We have an oval kind of structures, oval or a triangle, rectangular kind of structures were connected, one leading to another with the help of a pointer. Right. So these are some of the different patterns of note making. Then moving on to note taking. So I'm sure we are all familiar with this note taking also. Note taking from any lectures or speeches develops active learning skills of learners. Now it activates critical thinking in learners. It involves taking notes using our sensory skills and creates a strong mental impression in our mental faculty. Note taking is a complex activity that requires comprehension and selection of information and written production processes. Now, let me just give you the importance of note taking. Now, I'm sure you all would have come across even this probably at your undergraduate level, or maybe your intermediate or school times, when teachers keep lecturing. And then what do? You pull just pick up a pen or something and start making notes out of it. I mean, you don't copy the whole statement because there's hardly any time. When the teacher is lecturing, delivering lecture, what do? You start noting down some points, key points. Right. Now, key points, when you have to make a note of those key points, you have to really be very critical about it. I mean, which is an important point where I can develop further text out of it. So that is very, very important. So it's like, It improves your cognitive level. I mean, your it's like a creative mindset. Then also maybe it improves your critical thinking skills. Now, sometimes students feel that after listening to lecture, they have understood everything and they will be able to remember whatever they have listened to. But sometimes, the information may fade away from our memory, and there may be any cobwebs in the mind with new information too. So it's important to note down the information to use it later. So what are the advantages of note taking? Taking notes involves condensing or reducing large amount of information into small pockets that are easy to review and study. Studying from well-developed notes is more time efficient than rereading the text again. It saves our time. Note taking keeps a record of information laden document that can be used anytime for rehearsal and review. Now, what are the effective strategies for note taking? When you have to take down the notes, what should you do? Listen to lecture attentively and be selective. Reword the text. Like, for example, if there is a whole sentence, you can simply use one word for the whole sentence. Reword the text. Labeling and reminders. Use spaced practice. So use spaced practice, keep notes flexible. Right. Now, there are different ways and methods to take notes. Like, for example, you have annotations, then you have cornell notes, 2-column notes, 3-column notes, outline notes. Now, it's given in your textbook. I'm sure you all would have read the textbook. You will definitely understand. And about this note taking. Then we have the next chapter called the summarizing. Now, what is summarizing? It's nothing but a gist of, of a text. So instead of, now, for example, let me just remind you all about the, there was a lesson about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's speech at the Constitution. Okay. It was a text which was in a verbal form. It was like an oratory kind of a thing. But then we need to understand to write it in the exam. I mean, we just can't write it as word to word, isn't it? We have to, then that is where you need to summarize it. So, so it's a kind of a gist about the whole thing. Now it's a brief statement or on account of the main points of a longer text. It gives an understanding to the reader what one has to understood, what one has understood of what one has read. It's written in our own words. So what basically a good summary is a short account of the main text, contains only and all the most important information, and it's in the own words of the reader. Now, some of the key points one has to remember for summarizing. It has to be shorter than the original, reduce the length. Again, let me remind you about précis writing. Précis writing, I'm sure you all would have done it in your school days and in your college days. I mean, in your junior college, intermediate. There is something called précis writing where you cut down all the irrelevant words or the phrases in a paragraph and cut it down to such an extent where the word limit is, maybe to, I mean, it's a restricted kind of a writing where you have to come down to a word limit. There is a limitation of words. So maybe from 500 words to say 100 words if you have to bring it down. So this is what is summarizing. Reject the information that is not needed. Reword in your own words and avoid plagiarism. Express the original ideas and opinion accurately. reproduce the original facts and opinion, compare the same meaning into lesser words, recharge the words in lesser words. So the role of note making in writing a summary. How can note making be helpful in writing a summary? So now the skills of note making will help you in writing the summary. In order to write good summary, read the passage you want to summarize carefully, then underline the keywords, make notes from the passage using the notes. You can prepare a draft summary, then edit the draft summary and write the final summary. Just take a look at the whole the essay, and then you will understand whether you have cut down the irrelevant or unwanted kind of phrases or words or the information. And then we come upon to the summarized gist of that statement, the passage. Right. Now, sometimes we also come across writing a summary of a story. Now, we know a story has 5 elements like character, setting, conflict, resolution, and plot. Right. So now, if at all we have to write a summary of the whole story, we need to cover all these elements and make explicit in your own words. Okay. That is, simple. Like, you would have read a story. And when you are summarizing it, you kind of, narrating it to somebody. You summarize it and tell the same thing to your friend. So that is what it is all about. In that summary, when you are narrating it, you try to bring in all the 5 elements into it. Okay, in a narrative technique. Right. So that is summarizing. And then this is very, very helpful, especially when you are doing your academic writings, or maybe if you are preparing for your exam. It kind of gives you a gist of the entire passage. So you need not all the time read the whole text. Instead, when you summarize it, you will understand what exactly is there in that passage. So with this, we finish 3 modules of this academic writing. That is the writing short text, writing an essay, then shortening text for future use. That is note making, note taking, and summarizing. Tomorrow, in the next class, we are going to start with assignments for assessment, where we have assignments, reports, proposals. Here we end the class. With this, we end the session. And I want you people all the students to learn to read the passage and come prepared for the next session. Thank you.